friends, we are in the 5th Sunday of the Lenten season, almost close to the end of the Lenten season. Another 2 weeks we'll be in the Holy Week and Good Friday, Holy Saturday and Sunday. Of course, the Holy Thursday also goes along with it. Let me start with this message for this week. Once again, it's a beautiful message. You know, the readings of the Lenten season are just classic. Every one of them makes us realize, makes us meditate and perhaps inspire us with so lofty thoughts that I wish sometimes the Lenten season could have been prolonged a little more. But that's not necessary. Let me be a little short of the readings of today. We have 3 readings, as you know. The first one is from the book of Jeremiah. The second one is from the book of Hebrews. And the Gospel, of course, from the Gospel of John. And I begin with the John's account of Jesus, especially as he is among us. The first thought that comes to me is, we wish to see Jesus. We wish to see Jesus. You find this sentence in today's Gospel. You know, the context is there are some of these foreigners, perhaps Greeks they are called, and you know, the Jews normally don't associate with anyone who is a foreigner. They try to keep them away. But these foreigners, these Greeks have come. They meet Philip. And Philip in the Bible is like one who introduces the people to Jesus and Jesus to the people. And so they tell Philip, we want to see Jesus. Such a beautiful word. We are all longing to see Jesus. What a great day it was that God gives me a grace to see Jesus. And perhaps some of us, we wait for that moment, that perhaps that in front of that statue, in front of that experience that I would like to see Jesus. But Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. Not only we see him in the Blessed Sacrament, in the church, in the holy places, perhaps we can see him also in other times. To see Jesus in a friend, in a person who is smiling. You know, there's a woman who met me some time back and said that I was just in the dumps. I was just so moody because my children had not phoned up. And of late, my son also was acting very funny and not wanting to talk to me. I was feeling so bad that why am I living at all? You know, that's the time she says a little girl came running to her. She was going for an exam or something. And she says, Auntie, please bless me, I'm going for exam. And she says, when I saw the face of that child, I saw God. I saw God as it were. Because children have that beautiful sort of encounter that we can experience with God. And she says, I saw Jesus. So this is the first thing that I want to say, this our inborn desire to see Jesus, and especially in the Lenten season. The second one is a beautiful sentence that becomes the theme of the Lenten season also, namely, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it does die, it bears much fruit. The seed of grain that dies and that lives. We know that unless it dies, the sprout, the sapling will not come up. And that's the principle of life for each one of us. As much as we like to preserve ourselves, keep ourselves, live for ourselves, nothing will happen. But when we lose ourselves, especially for the sake of others, for the good of others, not only good that we experience, but we also feel good, and the others are also benefited by our goodness. Jesus died for us. The whole of the Lenten season is this meditation that God gave His only Son to us in order to redeem us. And He does it by dying for us. The third sentence that I take from the scriptures today is what we call from the second reading of Hebrews chapter 5, 7 to 9. In the days of His flesh, Jesus offered special prayers and supplications with loud voice and tears. What does it mean? That Jesus suffered, but in obedience. In obedience. Nobody perhaps would like to suffer for the sake of suffering. But Jesus takes upon Himself the cross. He suffers, but suffers in obedience. The book of Hebrews, the author of the Hebrews, almost humanizes Jesus. That Jesus was like us in all things except sin. And therefore, He also suffered like a human being. And perhaps He didn't want to suffer because the human nature is such. At the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus cries out, Father, take this chalice away from me, but not my will, your will be done. So therefore, this suffering in obedience. And finally, I take a sentence from the first reading, the reading of book of Jeremiah, which is happening in most of our times, namely, God does not reject us. Perhaps we have broken the covenant that God made with us. God's protection, God's love, God's blessings, we have broken. You know, a pot, if you break it, you just can't stitch or put together the pieces, but then God does a miracle. And in this reading of Jeremiah, God says that I will build, or rather I will make a new covenant with you. Though they broke the old covenant, I make a new covenant. And I will be their God. They will be my people. It's as good as God takes possession of the people and says that they are mine. Nobody can harm them. Nobody can do them. The reading of this weekday is one of the readings of a so beautiful one. Even if a mother forgets her suckling child, I will not forget you. Which mother will forget her suckling child? But even if it comes to that, I will not forget you. And therefore, I will put my law in their hearts, and I will write my law on their hearts. Meaning to say that I will go to that extent that they are mine. I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sins no more. Beautiful to say that this is what we are expecting in the Lenten season. To make a covenant, to make an agreement, rather to surrender ourselves to God's covenant that God makes for us, that He wipes away our sins, He takes away all our iniquities, and He makes a new covenant with us. We have started, or rather I have spoken to you about the 7 Lenten practices. This time I take the theme, or rather the Lenten practice of almsgiving and feeding the poor. Almsgiving and feeding the poor. We know what is feeding the poor. The poor are always with us, says the gospel. You can't do away and say that perhaps let there be a world where there are no poor people at all. It seems there are some countries, especially in Europe, beggars are not allowed to come out. Of course, I don't say beggars are a nuisance, but to say that the real beggars are real beggars. They have nothing else to do. Whom else they go? So try to wipe off, or rather to close them and say that we are a rich country, we do not want to see any poverty. I do not know. But feeding the poor is one of the almsgiving, and feeding the poor is one of the special acts of what we call compassion that we can do in the Lenten season. You know, Mahatma Gandhi used to say that the world has enough to feed everybody, for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. So there is enough food if we can share. Sometimes when we go to certain programs and marriages, the amount of food that is wasted, that is thrown out. I don't say that we should not eat and we should not eat good food, but then we have to also remember that there are others who don't have this what we have, and to share with them is something great. Mother Teresa used to say if you can't feed the whole world, rather if you can't feed 100 people, at least feed one. Start with one. Enough. That is great. And in the Bible, we have so many times reference of Jesus helping the poor, feeding the poor, the multiplication of the loaves. Of course, they may not have been very poor, but Jesus had compassion on them and he multiplied the loaves and the fishes in order to satisfy everybody. So also so many other instances we have. Man does not live on bread alone. Of course, we need to eat, but everything that comes from God. And therefore, this food or sharing with the others is very important. So also almsgiving. Almsgiving is part of what we lessen our weight or burden by sharing it with others. There is sometimes we have that desire to possess everything. I want this, I want that, I want that. And no amount of perhaps logic we can ever say that I have enough. I have enough. But the Bible says perhaps in as much as you give to the others, reach out to the others, God will also reach out to you. Almsgiving. And many a time, almsgiving is a powerful weapon also for us to realize that we also perhaps in some need, in some time we may be in need and also will need help and support from the others. At the same time, the almsgiving that we do makes the poor satisfied, give them what they need. At the same time, it will not deprive us. It will not deprive us. By giving alms that you suddenly become poor. No, God gives 100-fold. God gives 100-fold. And how much to give? How much to pour out? Perhaps we can't say that you give this much, you give that much, but God knows. That beautiful scene in the Bible where Jesus is sitting in the temple and the people are pouring out their money, so much of it, and comes that old widow perhaps. She opens her purse and puts 2 coins, and Jesus tells the others that this lady has put more than everybody else. The disciples perhaps can't understand the logic of Jesus, but Jesus says the coins were the most important for her. Perhaps that was her livelihood for the day, and she puts everything. Almsgiving. And therefore, there is also the quotation in the Bible that when you give alms, you don't have to make publicity. What your right hand is doing, giving, may your left hand not know. And what the Heavenly Father sees in secret will bless you. So this is what we are called upon to do in the Lenten season, almsgiving and feeding of the poor. We have important days in this week. The 19th of March, the feast of St. Joseph. It's a beautiful feast. It's a very affectionate feast. The feast of the men folk, all the men. They are like St. Joseph in their family, the elder brother, the father himself, the grandfather, the one who is perhaps the father of the company or a factory who looks after the others. These are all the images we can think of St. Joseph and replicate his image also in our life. First of all, St. Joseph, as we know, was a character who always was behind the scenes. In this male-dominated society, as it were, much more in the time of Israel, St. Joseph is one who stands behind Mother Mary, behind the curtain, as it were. He pushes Mother Mary for everything. They say behind every man there is a successful man, there is a woman behind. But in the case of St. Joseph, it seems to be that Mary is a successful one and he stands behind. He is a character in the shadows. There is not a single word that is spoken by him in the whole Bible. His name is pronounced or rather announced only about 19 times. I am told about Our Lady is much more than 40-50 times it has been come. But then nowhere does he want to take or rob or push Mary at the side. He always pushes Mary, encourages her. As a father of the family, as a father of the Holy Family, he takes care of Mary. He doesn't, though he looks so soft and perhaps somewhere closed up, but then at the times of danger, he takes Mother Mary and Jesus to safety to Egypt, comes back, and so many other things. Also at the scene of that, when Jesus was being offered at the temple, perhaps Joseph also must have felt very much that this child is not going to be their child as such because it's offered to the world. When Jesus was taken to the temple, perhaps Jesus took so much pride in going with St. Joseph, carrying the bags, carrying a little luggage, walking, and the disappointment when he doesn't find Jesus in his one. But you see this beautiful combination between Mary and Joseph. They don't blame each other, though they expected the child to be along with one of them, but it's okay. And when he comes back, perhaps Jesus allows Mary to do the hard talking, to tell Jesus. Joseph should have taken and scolded Jesus, but Mary seems to scold him and says, "Son, why have you done this to us?" And the beautiful word of Mother Mary, I don't know if you read the Bible properly, especially this particular part. Mary says, "Your father and I were looking for you." She could have said that I and your father, secondary. No, she puts the father as the main one. Your father and I were looking for you. So St. Joseph is a beautiful caricature or picture of what we call the responsibility in the family, faithfulness in the family, the simplicity in the family, the humility, the poverty. This is what St. Joseph represents us. We have some churches in our Archdiocese which are dedicated to St. Joseph, and I have sent a small circular last month, and I have told the people, especially the women, that celebrate the feast of your fathers, the feast of your husbands, the feast of your men folk in the family on the day of St. Joseph. I sometimes joke a little and say that the women get a lot of attention. They have a lot of feasts that to celebrate. There are so many days for them, but which day is for the men? Perhaps St. Joseph's Day could be a good day, and celebrate it well in your family, in your community, in your workplace, so that the men are also they feel wanted, they feel graceful, and they consider themselves, or rather the others consider them as a blessing, a very special blessing on the feast of St. Joseph. We have another big celebration in this particular week on the 21st of March, what we call the Chrism Mass. The Chrism Mass, as you know, the chrism is the name of the oil, chrism oil we say. And so Chrism, it is named as Chrism oils because that day we really bless the chrism and the other oils. Basically, the Mass of the Chrism is done by the bishop along with the priests, and on that day 3 oils are blessed. In fact, all the oils are blessed on that day. The first oil is called the oil of the catechumens. That's for the newly baptized. That is oil that is sort of almost smeared on the chest of the child. The second oil is the oil of the chrism, and this is the holy oil that is used for all the blessings to bless a person, especially in this ordination, also at the confirmation, and also for a bishop that is appointed is consecrated with this chrism oil. And the third is oil of the sick. As we know that especially people when we are sick, the priests are called and they anoint the people with the oil of the sick, oil of healing we can call, not just oil of the sick but oil of healing. And if God so wills that the person may be healed, otherwise prepare him for this, whatever God wishes him. Besides this exercise of blessing the 3 oils, the bishop celebrates the Chrism Mass with all the priests of the diocese. So therefore the priests consider this day as almost the day of their celebrations of their ordination, a memorial of their ordination. And just as the bishop on the day of the ordination holds the hands of the priests, prays over them, and they also promise the bishop what we call the oath of obedience, that we will be faithful to the church, to the teachings of the church, and all these promises are made, and therefore with all the priests together the bishop celebrates what's called the Chrism Mass, the Mass of the priests themselves, what we call unum presbyterium. It's a Latin word, unum is one, presbyterium is all the priests together as one body, and therefore this Mass is celebrated in the cathedral with all the feasts, all the brothers, all the priests together. It will be on the 21st of March at 10 o'clock. I request as many of you can come and experience this bonding between the bishop and the priests and of course the people together. On 22nd of March this year, we ask you to keep it up in a very special way. A day of prayer and fasting in this season of Lent for what we call peace and harmony in our country. The bishops of India met last month in Bangalore, and all the bishops came out with a common statement, a final statement we call it, and analyzing the situation of the country which is really in a precarious situation today, and there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of unemployment, there is a lot of distrust, there is even some hatred between the communities, communal situations, and in this situation we said the church has also to play a great role. And this role, first of all, is by prayer. So therefore we pray for the country, that there may be peace and harmony in our country, especially as we are going to the elections and the atmosphere gets heated up. There's so many parties competing and each one trying to say that they are better than the others and the candidates and so many other things. We say that this be a time of a peaceful transition from one government to the another government. We do not know which government is going to come in future, but then all of us are responsible, all of us are important in order to elect a new government, a new representatives. And for this, every one of us has to cast its vote. We are having small seminars to give the election consciousness to our people, to say that it's very important to vote, because these people whom you are going to vote, they will rule over you for the next 5 years. It's as good as you have given your key of your freedom, your key of your prosperity, key of the whole house or perhaps everything into their hands. Imagine you buy a new car and this friend of yours who comes and you just take the key and give it to him, meaning to say you can drive where you want, you can do what you want. That's exactly what is happening in elections. The representatives come in front of us, they promise us heaven and above heavens. They promise us so many things, but we have to ask them some serious questions, especially this: you are asking my vote, but then what are you ready to give me? First of all, are you ready to assure me that I'm going to have a life of peace and harmony, that I can live, I can practice the constitutional freedoms, that I can practice my religion, that perhaps I can speak freely, that I can move freely, I can seek a job, I can get married freely, or my freedoms are going to be restricted. We have known in the past what it means to be restricted, especially regarding religious beliefs. The freedom to convert, the freedom to practice. Though Article 25 of our Constitution says that we have the freedom every citizen has the freedom to preach, to proclaim and to propagate. People have been giving a lot of meanings for this. So therefore we ask that we get good representatives who will rule over us. Basically, I have said 4 things that we can look or we can ask for in the candidates that you vote. First of all, a secular candidate. A candidate who is open to all the religions, to all the brothers and sisters. We are all of one family. Secondly, what we say, a non-communal. It's very dangerous to elect communal candidates because they are one particular religion, one particular people, one particular caste, whereas India is for all. We call this a motherland, that we are all children of this motherland. So therefore, we say that besides secular, he should also be non-communal. Thirdly, respecting the Constitution, respecting what we call the democratic traditions, that a person who says that we don't want the Constitution, or perhaps we have to edit the Constitution, there is someone who has said that we should have a new Constitution. This is very dangerous thoughts. So one who can uphold the institution of the Constitution itself and the freedom, democracy. And finally, I said the persons who don't go for money. There are many persons who offer the money during the elections. We are as good as selling our birthright by taking this money and voting for them. It's selling our birthright. We read in the Bible Esau or Abel. Esau sold his birthright for one plate of food that he was eating. It's something like that. For the little money that these people are going to give us, we are going to we are going to be slaves to them in future by selling our own, what we call the vote, as it was. So therefore, those who are not corrupt, the four characteristics: secular, non-communal, one who is democratic and loves the Constitution, respects the Constitution, and fourthly, one is not corrupt. So therefore, this particular day, 22nd of March, the bishop suggested that the whole India, it's a Friday, and a Friday is normally in the Lenten season, we have fasting, we have abstinence, we have prayers. So therefore, this particular day, all of us in every church, in every place, we are connected to each other. We pray for the country. We pray for the country in a very special way, and also we fast. We fast for the country. So perhaps our prayers will also be heard. Besides these, what we call the communal prayers, we also have family prayers. We have also asked the people to say what's called the Rosary, the Rosary campaign, which is very important. The Rosary, Mother Mary also perhaps connected to each of us, like in the beads. She also connects the whole of our country. We have suggested that there may be what we call the Rosary campaign. Some people may think, what can we do with the Rosary? What is a small thing that Bishop is speaking about? That Rosary is not so important. In the year 571, there was this big war which the papal states, that means the Rome, and the Pope was the head of the Roman state, was confronting the enemies. And the enemies were so large that many people told the Holy Father Pope that time to say that there's no point in fighting. It's just that we will be simply powdered. They are lakhs and lakhs, and we are just 10,000, we are just 20,000. What can we do? And Holy Father was very sad. But then he suddenly surprised everybody and said that, let us recite the Rosary. And whole of Italy recited the Rosary. And with such fervor and intention, and perhaps what we call the motivation that they had. Miracles of miracles. The enemies were stuck in their places. They could not move forward. And they asked themselves, what's going on? Why is it that we cannot go? Because Mary withheld the army to the Rosary. So therefore, the recitation of the Rosary is also very important. And also the bishops have declared that day as a day of fasting, as a day of prayer. Kindly keep it up. I finally go to what's called the jewels of the church, the jewels of the Archdiocese. As I said, let me not stick myself to certain jewels that I pick up and keep it here. A jewel of the Archdiocese could be surely one of our institutions, perhaps our own what we call monuments, or perhaps a movement that we have. I spoke of the St. Vincent de Paul, and also maybe some of the jewels that are hidden that we bring to birth. But today's jewel is very obvious and very much loved in Bangalore, St. Patrick's Church. You will all smile and say, what a monument we have. What a beautiful church we have in the heart of the city, in the heart of what we call the commercial street and the commercial area of Bangalore. That a church rises up and reminds the people of God's presence among us, St. Patrick's Church. I also mention it as a jewel, especially this week, because we have the feast of St. Patrick on the 17th of March, which happens to be Sunday. And though we may not celebrate the feast on Sunday of the saints as such, but still it's a memorable day for all of us. St. Patrick's, perhaps some of you have visited, some of you have just made passing visit. There are so many good things about it. First of all, those spires that go up, beautiful to see, especially in the night when we use those dim lights to see that. And secondly, the stones that sort of immortalize the building itself, beautiful stones, built of stones as it were. And the stone building is almost make us look like an eternal edifice. I don't know, where going inside, you have seen what we call the perpetual adoration of the Blessed Sacrament chapel that is there. Beautiful. When you sit there, it's as good as the time passes by. But then for you it stops. It stops as you sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I have myself tried to experience this closeness to the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament at St. Patrick's. I would say, have you seen what we call the beautiful frescoes, the window panes, the statues? There are so many plaques there which goes down the history, reminding us of so many people who died, who perhaps donated, who perhaps helped the church. There are so many things to see in St. Patrick's if you have time, perhaps not only just one time. There is also perhaps, there are certain other things that has made St. Patrick's popular for us. The parish priest told me that there are a lot of weddings taking place in St. Patrick's. I am happy, I said, that people like to be married in that church in order to make their marriage also a solid one, like the St. Patrick's solid structure. There's another thing that has been told about St. Patrick's which came to me, my notice just recently, that they celebrate a Mass in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. Can you imagine a Mass in the church at 1 o'clock? And the parish bishop and the assistant told me that this Mass is attended by so many people, and it sort of exceeds the attendance of all the other Masses. You say the morning Mass is better, the 10 o'clock Mass is better, but the priests tell me that 1 o'clock Mass is completely thronged by the people, all the working people, which means there is a hunger for God. There's a hunger to pause by the church, the hunger to receive the Blessed Sacrament, the Holy Communion. And so all the people who are working, perhaps many of them have got so many things to do in their offices, so many things to worry about. But 1 o'clock, you see everyone rushing towards St. Patrick's in order to attend that Mass. God bless our people. God bless all those people. Perhaps they have a lot of worries. Sometimes maybe the mechanics or the accountants or the big bankers who are there, they can do a little mistake, they can do a little favor to the others, but all this combined so well in the afternoon Eucharist that they celebrate there. There is also the chapel of St. Anthony on the premises. On every Tuesday it is just sort of flooding and overflowing, as it were, with the devotion of St. Anthony. We have also there a school where we try to cater the poor children, the middle class to the St. Patrick's School. We have a St. Patrick's orphanage or boarding, which fortunately also is supported by many people, the many donors who come and give us. There are also a little of a shopping center that will bring certain income, some income for the Archdiocese, which is also important for us. But I know that you won't be satisfied with this explanation of mine. St. Patrick has a rich, rich history. And let me just repeat a few points to you so that those who pass by can say that St. Patrick's makes us proud because of its history, because of its grandeur. If I may say something about St. Patrick's, the story starts in 1840s. It seems the population of Catholic population was just about 5,000, mostly the soldiers, some Britishers that were there, and they were wanting to have a small church for themselves. And the two priests who took lead that time were Father Gaillot and Chevalier. These were both MEP missionaries who were there, and for the first time that they thought that perhaps a church could be built, and so they applied to the British government. Perhaps the British that time meant not only Catholics but also Protestants, but they were kind enough. And St. Patrick's ground, do you know, it was a parking place for camels, for elephants, for the other things, and perhaps people to relax, etc. So this was the ground that the government gave to St. Patrick's fathers in order to start building their church. And so the first church was built in the year 1844, was the inauguration as such. And do you know how much it cost? It cost 9,000 rupees, of which we are told the British contributed 4,000. Can you imagine? Perhaps times have changed, and what is 1,000 or 1 rupee that time could be 100 or 1,000 rupees today, but then that is the figure. And so after this, the foundation was laid and the church was called, the people had a lot of devotion for Virgin Mary, Mother, our own mother, but then it was called as Assumption Church, but the name got changed very fast, because of whom the Irish soldiers were so proud of this church, and they said, yes, we would like to name it or rename it as St. Patrick's Church. And so this is a little island that was there in the city of Bangalore, that is St. Patrick's Church, that perhaps has come down to us. From 1840 we go back to now, let us say, another 50 years, when Pope Leo XIII declared India, or what we call the places in India, as the dioceses, and the bishop that was named there, Bishop Carbono, Etienne Carbono, in 1845 was appointed as the Bishop of Mysore, Vicar Apostolic of Mysore, but residing in Bangalore. In the beginning he's supposed to have stayed a few days in what's called, in the Shivajinagar area, it was called Blackpilly that time, Blackpilly. But then this man said, perhaps it's better for me to move to a little central place, and he made the Bishop's house, St. Patrick's Church, as the Bishop's Cathedral Church and the Bishop's house there. And this fact took place as the seat of the Bishop, and the cathedral took place in the year when the Pope had announced the independence of the diocese as such, in the year 1987. 25th of January 1987, St. Patrick's Church became the cathedral as also the seat of the Bishop. This is about 50 years. St. Patrick's was 50 years old. And so now the new priests who came found that people were becoming more and more, and surely better sort of infrastructure was necessary. So a priest called Thabard, he thought, we will build a new church in a distinctive Gothic style, and he sought help from the people, sought help from the government, and he built a new church with 1,50,000 rupees. 1,50,000 rupees was the budget of the church that time. And he put up these beautiful statues, stained glasses, melodious bells, and a beautiful, when you go to the choir, you can see that beautiful, what we call the piano, the musical instrument that is there, which was all part of the other. And Bishop Kleiner, in the year 1999, 12th November, inaugurated this present Church of St. Patrick's, which, as I said, was the cathedral. In 1942, the bishop moved from St. Patrick's to St. Francis Xavier Church, and that became the cathedral of the church, the cathedral of the Archdiocese. And so the centenary was celebrated in 1948, January 23rd to 25th. And we are told that that particular day was such a joyous day that 30,000 people marched in procession from the St. Patrick's Church to St. Francis Xavier Church. Perhaps there was no space that was available on the road as such, because people were so much, and the Blessed Sacrament procession was beautiful, the people say. The 175th Jubilee celebrations were celebrated in a few years ago, and Monsignor C. Francis was the parish priest and rector of this church that time, and I also came for the celebration to see so many bishops that day, and the people also rejoicing the glory of their church. May St. Patrick's be a sign and symbol of unity for us, the sign and symbol of grandeur, but also that has compassion for the poor. I wish the patricians, the parishioners of St. Patrick, a very happy feast, and I am so proud of this jewel of the Archdiocese.
The Shepherd's Voice, which is being presented by our beloved Archbishop, Most Reverend Dr. Peter Machado, the Archbishop of Bangalore, who takes so much of interest and concern in order to bring the various topics, the contextual aspects, in order to inform, educate, and catechize all of us, the priests, the religious, and faithful of this vast archdiocese. And I'm sure you are enjoying this program, Shepherd's Voice, and I request each one of you to share with your other colleagues, friends, and family and relatives, near and dear ones, so that everyone in this archdiocese can be more closer to listen to the Archbishop on this Shepherd's Voice, the weekly feature. My dear friends, as I've always told, that this is a wonderful platform wherein we can connect to the shepherd of this archdiocese, wherein he brings in the interesting topics in order to increase our devotion and love towards God, and also to know the spiritual matters that concerns our faith. In a very special way, you are most welcome to ask your questions, queries, and you can send them to us at archdblr@gmail.com, and you will also see our mobile number in and through which you can connect with our media center, Ave Studios, and the Archdiocesan Communication Center. Please do write to us your feedback, your opinions. Thank you. Continue to watch and continue to share with others.